In Blue Lock, ego is king. Without ego, you have no place in the Blue Lock world. Jinpachi Ego, the mastermind behind Blue Lock, believes that ego is the key to becoming the best striker in the world. In other words, a striker must be selfish, prioritizing their own goals above all else to dominate on the field. Now, we have 4 different types of egos in Blue Lock. Bear in mind that each player in Blue Lock possesses 2 types of egos in their personality. It's like the yin and yang of their own, drawn from one of the 4 types we will be learning about today. The first type of ego is the world type ego. People who possess the world type ego include Kaiser, Isagi, Reo, Hiroi, Nico, and several others. Those in this category only care about enhancing their status in society and achieving the best results possible, whether in the league or in the world of football. For them, it's all about the numbers, the status, and how the world views them, nothing related to self-worth or how they view themselves. Winning and achievement are their main priorities. These players care deeply about being the best in the world, standing at number 1, and ensuring they have a high standing in society. One perfect real-life example of this is Ronaldo. Ronaldo has a world-style ego. If you listen to his interviews, you will understand that all he cares about are the results and scoring the most goals. On top of that, his entire career has been about proving to the world that he is the best footballer in history and making his mark in the football world, which he has done. For him, he doesn't do things to boost his self-worth because he already has a strong sense of self-worth. He does it to prove to the world that he is the best. Kaiser is the perfect embodiment of the world-style ego. All Kaiser wants is to win the Champions League, then the World Cup, and be known as the best footballer in the world, even if his intentions behind it are negative. Kaiser cares about his social standing and his results, striving to be the best of the best. For him, anyone catching up to him is a major red flag, one of them being Isagi. Kaiser sees Isagi as a major threat because Isagi is continuously growing and outperforming both his allies and enemies. His growth is happening at such a rapid pace that Kaiser knows he's about to lose the king status and results he's built at Bastard München. Isagi is the biggest threat he has ever encountered in the world of football, so Kaiser had no option but to do what all world-style egos do when in threatening conditions: manipulate or use others in crisis, even if they aren't his German allies but Blue Lock members. The idea that Isagi was catching up to him and stealing everything from him in the ranking put Kaiser in a position where he had no choice but to change his whole identity and become reborn. Instead of using his usual Kaiser philosophy with Ness, Kaiser abandons it completely, and for the first time in his life, he uses his team, for the very first time, just for the sake of his own results. It was the first time in history that Kaiser passed the ball to Raichi or Kunigami, but for the sake of his own goal and his own results, he is willing to do anything, even if it means using Blue Lock members. That's the mindset of world-type egos, and Isagi is also one of them. For Isagi, instead of manipulating his teammates, he uses them without manipulation, but still, both of them use their teammates for their own results. Next, we have the individualistic ego, which is the complete opposite of the world-type egos. Individualistic type egos, also known as self-type egos, are completely different from world-type egos in every aspect. These individuals don't place too much importance on results or world validation. Instead of wanting all the trophies and to be the best in the world for the sake of being known and remembered by millions, they do it because it's personal. Everything they do is based on boosting their self-worth. They are self-motivated individuals who only get motivated to do something when the desire is truly there. The individualistic ego prioritizes boosting their talents and focuses on anything they find important and interesting. These individuals do not need other players around to win. They can, in fact, do it alone, but only if they are in the zone. While Kaiser and Isagi depend on their team passes to score a goal, if you watch Rin and Shido closely, these players are independent and can do it alone the majority of the time. Rin is the perfect embodiment of the individualistic ego. The main reason Rin plays football is to surpass Sei and destroy Isagi. That's the entire purpose of his training, to be the best in the world. Just to accomplish that, he does it because it's important for his self-worth. For him, self-worth is his key motivation. Losing to those two would literally destroy him mentally, so his whole life goal revolves around defeating them alone. He doesn't care about Noel Noah or other top-tier footballers in the world. His focus is solely on those two. In one chapter, Isagi openly tells Rin that this match will determine who will be number 1, him or Rin. We all expected Rin to respond with something like, "Yes, watch me take number 1, but instead, he openly tells Isagi that he doesn't care about being number 1. All he cares about is destroying Isagi. That is the mentality of an individualistic ego. For them, results are nothing special. All they want is to fulfill their desires, no matter the circumstances. Once Rin destroys Isagi, his dream will be achieved, and for him, that would mark the end of football. In other words, all Rin cares about is defeating someone stronger than him simply because it is important for his self-worth. For him, overcoming a stronger opponent elevates his self-worth. His entire life depends on it. If you read the chapters where Bastard München faces PXG, you'll notice that when Rin enters deep concentration, he can control the ball for as long as he wants. He doesn't need to pass to others because he exists in his own world, an individualistic world where he thrives alone. Shidu is another example. If given the right environment, he would go all out and outperform his opponents. For Rin, being the best in football and winning is crucial, not for the sake of results or trophies, but because it gives meaning to his identity and security. Losing shatters his self-worth and image, and the person who defeats him becomes a major threat. That's exactly what Isagi and Sai represent to Rin. Baru is another perfect example of an individualistic ego, alongside Shidu and Bachira. All Baru cares about is being the king of football, the king of the match. For him, trophies are the least important. As long as he is known as the king of the match by scoring the most goals, he is satisfied. His entire motivation is tied to his self-worth and identity. Bachira also embodies an individualistic ego. On the other hand, the third type of ego is known as the restrictive ego. These individuals thrive in discomfort and in high-pressure situations. The restrictive type excels in conditions that have clear rules and objectives, and they work tirelessly to achieve those objectives to ensure success. For example, if the goal is for Bastard München to defeat PXG, a restrictive type will do whatever it takes to make that happen. Nothing will stand in their way. They often awaken in these moments, pushing themselves to their limits to achieve the objective. However, there is also a subgroup of restrictive types who rebel against rules and objectives to achieve success. These individuals despise restrictions and will do anything to break free from them. Rules feel like a prison to them, and if those rules are team-based, they will confidently break them whenever they see fit. Rin and Baru are both prime examples of restrictive egos, but with opposite personalities. Rin thrives under restrictive conditions, where he follows objectives and rules to achieve success without setbacks. You never see Rin rebelling against the team structure or disregarding the coach's instructions. He works within the system and awakens when the conditions become restrictive. Rin is at peak performance when his options are limited and when he is in an uncomfortable environment. This is why he often truly awakens only after the opposing team scores first. Before that, he remains composed, simply observing his opponents during the match. We see this in the Bastard München versus PXG match. Rin awakens right after Bastard München scores their second goal. At that moment, his options were restricted, and losing became a direct threat to his ego and self-worth. With no other choice, he unleashed his inner beast. For Rin to perform at his absolute best, he needs to be mentally shaken by the fear of losing to someone he deems a serious threat, such as Isagi. Without that threat, his motivation doesn't fully activate. Baru, like Rin, is also a restrictive type, but he achieves success by going against the rules and objectives. In other words, he thrives on rebellion. He wants to prove to the rule makers that his way is the only way to succeed. For him, it's his way or nothing. We saw this clearly in the Ubers match against Bastard München. Baru rejected his coach's structured team play, believing that his method was superior. He was determined to prove it, and thanks to his rebellious nature, the team eventually sided with him, adopting his style of play and securing victory. That's how his ego thrives. Both Rin and Baru share the same core ego traits. They are restrictive and individualistic. However, while Rin is an objective achiever, Baru is an objective destroyer. He thrives as a rebel, breaking structures rather than following them. Kaiser is another perfect example of a restrictive type. Like Rin, he thrives in uncomfortable environments with limited options. However, unlike Rin or Baru, Kaiser is both a rebel and a faithful rule achiever, depending on the situation. For example, when it comes to passing to Isagi or other Blue Lock members, Kaiser typically refuses. He rebels against the idea. Primary concern is maintaining the pass to Kaiser rule, ensuring that he remains the focal point of the team. However, when his results are in danger, whether his team is losing or his ego is being threatened by someone like Isagi, Kaiser will faithfully follow the team's rules to secure his victory. In other words, he shifts between being a rebel and a rule follower, depending on what benefits his results. The key difference between Rin, Baru, and Kaiser is their underlying motivation. While Rin and Baru are individualistic, restrictive types who play football for their personal desires, Kaiser is a restrictive world type egoist. His ultimate goal isn't self-fulfillment, it's results. He plays for status, to be recognized as the best in the world. The last type of egoists are the freedom type egoists. One of the perfect examples of a freedom type is Isagi, Shidu, and Bachira. These guys are the complete opposite of restrictive type egoists, as they don't do well in restrictive environments and usually perform best when they have freedom in their environment. Freedom allows them to think and create their winning formula. These players win when they have unlimited options and are not restricted by rules and objectives. Just like Isagi, he needs to have the freedom to think, process information, and then go all out. Isagi dislikes rules made by teammates, such as pass the ball to Kaiser or other random restrictions placed on him. The same applies to Bachira. Rules and restrictions cause him to underperform in games. For freedom-type egoists to perform at their best, they must have the freedom to play their own way, using their originality, without being told what to do or how to do it, whether by teammates or even coaches. Shido is the perfect embodiment of a freedom-type personality. We've seen how Shido does not get along with anyone who is restrictive and tries to steal away his freedom. He clashes with them, and often gets into fistfights. A prime example being Rin and Shido. On top of that, Rin and Shido have no chemical reaction because they are both individualistic. Individualistic players do not like teamwork, prefer to do things alone. When two individualistic players interact, they repel like two south poles of a magnet instead of a north and south. However, if someone grants Shido his freedom, allowing him to play the way he wants and score goals as he pleases, he will gladly join them. This is why Shido gets along with Sayatoshi. Sei gives him the freedom to do what he wants on the field as long as he is scoring goals. That's why Sei and Shido have the best chemical reaction. No one understands Shido like Sayatoshi because Sei grants him freedom without creating any restrictions. In fact, Sei was the reason Shido entered flow state and awakened to perform at his peak. On top of that, Shido's presence destroys the team's structure and creates chaos. Freedom-type egoists do not function well with rules and objectives. They prefer to do things their way without limitations because rules and objectives only hold them back from achieving peak performance. On the other hand, if you put Rin in an environment where he has freedom to perform and think, and where the environment is comfortable, you will see his performance drop dramatically. In order for Rin to awaken and outperform his opponents, he needs an environment where he is under pressure, has limited options, and where rules and objectives exist for him to achieve. So we know that freedom-type egoists get along best with other freedom types. However, sometimes restrictive types can get along with freedom types if their other ego traits align. Blue Lock has not explicitly revealed Sayatoshi's ego type, but if you analyze his playstyle and behavior, you can start to get an idea of where he belongs in the ecosystem. With Sai, he performs his absolute best in non-stressful conditions. In other words, he does not have a restrictive personality ego, but instead leans more toward a freedom-type ego. He thrives when his environment is not limited or restrictive and has no problem allowing his teammates to score goals. Rin is the destroyer, whereas Sai is the creator. Since Rin was a young boy, all he wanted was to be the final monster boss. In other words, he wanted to fight someone powerful, destroy them, and then disappear from football. His entire mission in life is to destroy Isagi and Sai and then leave football for good. Sai, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. He does not thrive in destruction or restriction. Instead, he thrives in freedom and creation. Instead of bringing out the best in allies or opponents just to destroy them, Sai brings out the best in his teammates, such as Shido, and uses their strengths to win for the team. Rin is all about destroying his allies or opponents, but for Sai, it's about bringing out the best in them and using it to win. Perfect example of Sai underperforming in a restrictive environment was during the match against Blue Lock. When Sai played against an awakened Rin, he performed his best not when the environment was restrictive, uncomfortable, and limited, but when it was comfortable, freeing, and full of options. When Rin entered destruction mode and made the game more restrictive, Sai's performance suffered. He couldn't think properly or make quick decisions to pass the ball to a teammate. If the environment had not been constrained and restricted by Rin, Sai would have definitely scored a goal for his team. Even Shido was surprised that Sai didn't pass the ball to the front line, because if he had, Blue Lock wouldn't have scored. However, Sai couldn't think straight during those restrictive moments, because he is a freedom-type ego, and restriction negatively affects his performance. A freedom-type personality like Sai needs a comfortable environment with fewer restrictions, allowing them to perform at peak level with unlimited options. Now, for the other half of his ego, is Sai an individualistic or world-type ego? Sai is definitely a world-type ego. The reason for this is that world-type egos desire to be the best in the world and are too focused on getting rankings and standing in society. For them, achieving what the world says is important in the world of football. On top of that, he cares about Japan and its future in football, which is something world-type egos care about. These types of egos care about boosting their standing in society and in the world of football. For Sai, it's all about being number one, just like Isagi and Kaiser. For him, winning achievements, getting into the best clubs, having the most goals, and having the right skills is important. Winning is key because that's what the world deems important. And that's also what's important to him as a world-type ego. Sai initially wanted to be a striker, but then he realized that his skills were not as great in other countries, so he chose to change to a midfielder. If Sai were an individualistic type ego, he would have stayed with the goal of being a striker, regardless of whether his skills were as great as those in other countries. However, as a world-type ego, he knew that the world wouldn't see him as a top striker because he wasn't as great as the other foreign footballers. So, he definitely is a world-type ego who cares about his standing in society and makes sure to be the best in that field. Unlike Rin, who can play individualistically and run with the ball for a long time without needing to pass to anyone, Sai does not have a problem using others to score a goal. And on top of that, he doesn't care too much about scoring goals in general. What he does care about is his team winning and being number one overall, and he will use his team to his advantage. World-type egos usually use their teammates for their results if needed. Not all the time, but most of the time. Sagi and Kaiser also have this trait, where they use their teammates for their own results. Rin thought Sai used him in their childhood, and the truth is, Sai may have used him, which is natural for a world-type ego to do. But he did not do it with negative intention. Sai may have used Rin for Rin's sake because he knew Rin's ego is different from his own. Rin thrives in destruction and limiting circumstances, like those villains in movies. For Rin, destroying someone amazing and unleashing his full potential happens when he's in restricted, uncomfortable circumstances. Sai probably knew that Rin wouldn't be able to be the best in the world if he was in comfortable conditions like being next to Sai. With Sai beside him, Rin would forever be mediocre and would never awaken. That's probably why Sai chose to leave for Spain. He knew that Rin would be forced to grow when he's not around, so he could one day catch up to him. Rin's full potential is only unleashed when he wants to destroy someone strong, someone amazing, and that amazing person is Sai. For Rin, Sai was the most amazing person he had ever met. He had this ego since he was a little kid, and Sai was aware of Rin's ego type. Overall, Sai is definitely a world-type ego who is based on freedom instead of restriction, and has the tendency to use others just for his advantage and results. When it comes to Ness, we still haven't determined his ego type, but based on what we can see, he does football because he is interested in it, not because it's important. The whole reason why Ness went into football is because it reminded him of magic. He does football because it removes the loneliness and isolation he felt with his family, and football is a way to boost his self-worth and give him an identity. Football is technically his life. He definitely is not a world-type ego, as Ness doesn't really care about results or trophies. For him, playing football helps him feel the magic he always wanted to feel. He does it because it's something that makes him feel good about himself. In other words, it boosts his self-worth. On top of that, he does football to help Kaiser become number one. It's something he wants to do and desires him to continue football. It's not about results or world status, but for personal reasons and self-worth. When it comes to freedom and restriction type ego, Ness is more likely to be a restrictive type of person who thrives when the environment is limited in options or uncomfortable. That is why we see Ness awaken only when his heart was broken by Kaiser. After Kaiser said he didn't want Ness in his life, Ness actually turned into a monster. The pain is what made him awaken and unleash his full power. He only changed when Kaiser destroyed his soul. So technically, Ness is an individualistic, restrictive ego type. If he were a freedom type, he would not mind being alone away from Kaiser. As long as his environment was comfortable, he would have still had a winning formula. Both Sai and Ness are theories for now, as we still do not have a clue where they belong in the ecosystem, but it's likely that they both fit into these categories. Now, let's end it with a question for you Blue Lockers. If you were in Blue Lock, what type of ego would you have? Would you be a world-type ego that is based on freedom or restriction? Or would you be an individualistic type ego based on restriction or freedom? Share yours below. And for now, see you in the next video.